Good morning, everyone. We're continuing our meditation series today in the book of 2 Kings, chapter 8, verses 1 through 6. I hope you guys are enjoying your own time in the Bible. One of the things that's so wonderful is that when we are doing our reading every day, that we get to have this time of communion with God. And as we're going through the pages, God will be speaking to our hearts. Each day as we read, there's going to be something that takes hold of our heart that we can think about with the Lord and have Him speak into our lives truths that's appropriate to the day in which we live, to the things that we're going to encounter, strengthening us to do His work. So I hope that your time in the Word is fruitful and you're just having a great time spending those moments, those precious moments with the Lord. In 2 Kings chapter 8, 1 through 6, we hear the story about the Shunammite. Now, we were introduced to her in chapter 4 of this chapter. She had a son who died, and Elisha the prophet restored him back to life. Now in chapter 8, Elijah is speaking to this woman who he had a relationship with. She was someone who would put him up as he moved from place to place. There was a room that she built in her house where he would stay. And he comes to her and he tells her that there's going to be a famine that comes into the land for 7 years. And he tells her to get out of the land and go wherever she can because the famine will be in the land of Israel. And at the end of 7 years, this woman returns. And when she returns, she finds out that her home that she was living in and the lands that she occupied were no longer hers. And she needs to go to the king to try to have those things restored to her. And she comes to the king, and the day that she comes to the king happens to be having a conversation with Gehazi, who is the servant of the prophet Elijah. And right when this woman's appearing before the king is asking Gehazi to tell him stories about Elisha and all the great miracles that he has done, and Gehazi is regaling him with all these stories, and he's telling him about Elisha and the resurrection of this boy from the dead. And as he's telling this story, lo and behold, here is this woman and her son standing before the king, and he points this woman out to the king, and the king is just amazed by the story and looks favorably upon this woman and says in the last verse that we're looking at today, restore all that was hers and all the proceeds of the field from the day she left the land until now. So he gives her back not only her land, but he restores to her everything that the land would have produced if she had been there working it for 7 years. So she not only gets back what was hers, but she gets back what she didn't even work for. All the abundance that that land had produced from the time that she left until now. And the thought occurred to me through this whole thing was, here's a woman who had adversity in her life. She had a son who was dying and did die in early part of his youth. And God made a provision and brought that child back to life. She now has to go through a time of famine. And during that time of famine, when she leaves, she goes into a foreign land. Everything that she owned was lost. And she comes back now looking to just find all those things that seem to have been taken from her. And I just remember that as we go through our life following God, we're going to go through different seasons of abundance and seasons of loss. Right now, as we're all home, quarantined during the coronavirus, many of us are concerned about businesses, jobs. There's a lot of people that are suffering a lot of loss, some loss of health, and some that we know even have loss of life. But when we're obedient to God, what we'll find is that He is planning way ahead for us, that He's looking out for those things that we don't have any control over. And He's manipulating things sometimes so quietly and even behind the scenes so that we can come to a place and find that all the things that we were so worried about, all the things that we were so concerned about, were all for naught. That He took care of everything and restores to us all the things that we thought maybe were lost. So the lesson for us is to not worry about the tomorrow. Leave that to God, who works out all these details for us. but rather focus on obedience. This woman was told to leave, and she left. She was told when to return, and she returned. And in her obedience, she found out that God took care of all of the other details. And I pray that's what we do each day, that we just do today, the things that we're called to do in obedience to God, and becoming more confident every day that He's going to work out everything, even though we don't see it and we don't understand how He's going to do it. And we're going to find that as we come before the King, that He's not only going to give us what we think we're due, but the abundance and the things that we never even thought we could receive, because He's gracious and He's good. So I just want to leave you with that word of encouragement to walk in obedience and leave the rest to God. I hope you have a great day, and I look forward to sharing some more with you tomorrow. Thanks. Bye.